What if I told you that the God Emperor of mankind, trapped on the golden throne for 10,000 years, has already been reborn? Not as a corpse sustained by sacrifice, but as something entirely new, growing in power within the warp itself. This is the Starchild theory, one of the most fascinating, controversial, and potentially universe-altering pieces of Warhammer 40K lore that Games Workshop has kept tantalizingly vague for decades. Today, we're going to explore every aspect of this theory. We'll dig into the ancient lore from Rogue Trader and 2nd edition, examine the evidence scattered throughout the setting, discuss the Sensei, the Illuminati, and living saints, and ask the ultimate question: could the Emperor's death lead not to humanity's extinction, but to his apotheosis as a true god? This is going to be a deep dive, so get comfortable. We have a lot to cover. Before we can understand the Starchild, we need to understand what happened to the Emperor during the Horus Heresy and what his current state actually is. 10,000 years ago, during the final moments of the Siege of Terra, the Emperor of mankind confronted his most beloved son, Horus Lupercal, aboard the War Master's flagship. Horus had been corrupted by all 4 Chaos Gods, transformed into a vessel of their combined power. The resulting battle was cataclysmic, psychic and physical confrontation that no mortal should have witnessed. The commonly told version says the Emperor hesitated because he still saw his son in Horus. Only when Horus killed a space marine or guardsman in front of him did the Emperor realize there was nothing left to save. He unleashed his full power and obliterated Horus's soul so completely that even the Chaos Gods couldn't resurrect him. But this victory came at a terrible cost. The Emperor's physical body was shattered. Mortally wounded, he was interred upon the Golden Throne, an ancient device originally designed to power the Imperial Webway project. The throne keeps his body barely alive while his psychic might holds shut the massive Webway breach beneath the Imperial Palace, preventing an endless tide of demons from flooding into Terra's heart. For 10 millennia, the Emperor has been trapped in this state. His physical form continues to decay despite the throne's life-sustaining functions. Every day, 1,000 psychers are sacrificed, their souls fed to the Emperor to maintain his consciousness and power. The Astronomicon, the psychic lighthouse that makes warp travel possible across the Imperium, requires his constant attention and vast amounts of psychic energy. But what is the Emperor actually doing? The official Imperium believes he's still conscious, still guiding humanity, sending visions and blessings to his faithful. Others believe he's essentially comatose, his vast psychic presence acting on autopilot while his true consciousness is elsewhere. And that's where the Starchild theory comes in. The Imperium faces a paradox. The Emperor is dying, the Golden Throne is failing, no one knows how to repair it, and his body decays further each year. But if he dies, catastrophe follows. The Astronomicon goes dark, interstellar travel becomes nearly impossible, and the Webway breach opens fully, likely turning Terra into a new Eye of Terror. The Imperium has built itself around the Emperor's continued existence, no matter how tenuous. The Adeptus Mechanica searches desperately for solutions. The High Lords of Terra carefully manage the knowledge of how bad things really are. The Inquisition monitors for any whisper of alternatives or heretical solutions. But what if the Emperor's death isn't the end? What if it's actually necessary for something greater? To understand the Starchild theory, we need to go back to the very beginning of Warhammer 40,000, the Rogue Trader edition published in 1987, and the subsequent 2nd edition materials from the early 1990s. The early lore of 40K was wild, experimental, and often contradictory. Games Workshop was still figuring out what this universe would be. The tone shifted between grimdark seriousness and dark comedy. And buried in these early sources were ideas that would later be quietly dropped or left ambiguous. The Starchild theory originates from this era, specifically from the realm of chaos books and materials about the Illuminati and Sensei. According to early lore, when Horus struck down the Emperor, something happened beyond physical injury. The Emperor's soul was wounded, perhaps even divided, One interpretation suggested that when the Emperor destroyed Horus, he had to sacrifice part of himself to do so. Or perhaps part of him was torn away in the confrontation with chaos. This fragment of the Emperor's soul, his humanity perhaps, or his compassion, was cast into the warp. There, isolated from the decaying corpse on the golden throne, this fragment began to grow and coalesce. Free from the physical body and the constant demands of holding the Imperium together, this soul fragment could develop into something new. This fragment became known as the Star Child. The Star Child is described as a nascent god forming in the warp, a being of pure, psychic energy that contains the Emperor's essential nature, but isn't bound by the same limitations. While the Emperor on the golden throne is trapped, decaying, and spread thin across billions of psychic tasks, the Star Child is free to grow stronger. The theory suggests that the Star Child is slowly accumulating power, fed by the souls of the faithful who die in the Emperor's name, by the belief of trillions of humans across the galaxy, and by the very essence of the Emperor himself as it leaks from his dying body. When the Emperor finally dies and his soul fully separates from his physical form, the Star Child will have matured enough to absorb it, becoming a complete, reborn God entity. The Star Child represents something revolutionary in 40K lore: hope. Not the false hope of the Imperium's propaganda, but genuine hope that there could be a solution to humanity's decline. Instead of the Emperor's death leading to inevitable catastrophe, it could lead to transformation and rebirth. It suggests the Emperor might have planned this, or at least understood it was a possibility. Perhaps he's been waiting, holding on just long enough for the Star Child to mature. Perhaps the faith of the Imperium, often criticized as superstitious and counterproductive, is actually accomplishing something, feeding power to the Star Child through belief and worship. Of course, this theory is controversial both in-universe and among fans. In-universe, even suggesting the Emperor might need to die for humanity to be saved would be the highest heresy. The Imperium is structured entirely around keeping the Emperor alive. Any talk of deliberately allowing his death would result in immediate execution. Among fans, some love the Star Child as a fascinating piece of deep lore that adds mythological depth to the setting. Others dislike it because it suggests a potential happy ending that conflicts with 40K's grimdark nature. It's also unclear how much of this old lore Games Workshop still considers canon. But whether you love it or hate it, the Star Child theory has influenced 40K lore in subtle ways, and elements of it keep reappearing. To understand the Star Child theory fully, we need to discuss the Sensei, the biological children of the Emperor, scattered throughout the galaxy. In early Warhammer 40K lore, the Emperor was portrayed as having had many relationships throughout human history. During his millennia walking among humanity before revealing himself, he fathered children. These children and their descendants carried a unique trait: they were perpetuals like their father, unable to die of old age and resistant to chaos corruption. These descendants became known as the Sensei, from the Japanese term for teacher or master. They were immortal humans who could live for thousands of years, and they carried a tiny spark of the Emperor's own psychic essence. The Sensei had several unique properties. They were perpetual, meaning they aged to maturity and then simply stopped aging. They could be killed, but they wouldn't die of natural causes. More importantly, they were psychically invisible to chaos. The Chaos Gods couldn't perceive them directly, and demons had difficulty detecting them. This made them incredibly dangerous to chaos, while simultaneously making them wanderers, outsiders who didn't quite fit into the rigid structures of imperial society. Most Sensei didn't know their true heritage. They simply knew they were different, that they aged slower than others, that they had unusual resistance to psychic corruption. They often became wanderers, mercenaries, explorers, or took on roles where their immortality was an advantage. Over 10,000 years, the Sensei had spread throughout the galaxy. Some estimates suggested thousands existed, though many had likely been killed in the galaxy's endless wars. Here's where the Sensei connect to the Star Child theory. According to the old lore, the sensei carried fragments of the Emperor's soul within them. These fragments were tiny compared to the Emperor himself, but they were pure and uncorrupted. The theory suggested that when a sensei died, their soul didn't disappear into the warp like a normal human's. Instead, it was drawn to the Star Child, merging with it and adding to its power. In this way, the sensei were like seeds the Emperor had planted throughout the galaxy. As they lived, fought, and eventually died, they would naturally contribute to the Star Child's growth. It wasn't planned by the sensei themselves. Most didn't know what they were or what would happen when they died. But collectively, they were helping to birth a god. Games Workshop has been extremely vague about the sensei in recent lore. They're not explicitly retconned, but they're not really mentioned either. The emphasis has shifted to the Emperor as a more singular godlike figure, rather than a being who had normal human relationships and children. However, the concept of perpetuals has remained and even expanded. We now know of several perpetuals in the lore Vulcan, Alania's person, John Grammaticus, and even Malkador the Sigillite might have been one. The Horus Heresy novels have explored this concept extensively. It's possible the sensei still exist in current lore, but are simply called perpetuals now, or they've been quietly written out. The ambiguity is frustrating, but also gives the community room to speculate. The sensei represent incredible narrative potential. Imagine discovering you're essentially a demigod, a child of the Emperor himself, carrying a fragment of the greatest psychic power humanity has ever produced. Imagine learning that your death would contribute to the birth of a new god. Would you sacrifice yourself willingly? Would you hide from this destiny? Would you even believe it? The tragedy of the sensei is that they're scattered and ignorant of their purpose. They could potentially be gathered, organized, or even deliberately sacrificed to accelerate the Star Child's growth, but that requires someone to know about them and have the will to act. Which brings us to the Illuminati. If the sensei are the unknowing children of the Emperor, the Illuminati are those who know the truth and work to prepare for the Star Child's birth. The Illuminati in Warhammer 40K are not the pop culture conspiracy theory organization. They're a secret cabal that has existed since the Horus Heresy, dedicated to preserving humanity through esoteric knowledge and desperate measures that the Imperium would consider heretical. Members of the Illuminati are drawn from all levels of Imperial society: inquisitors, rogue traders, high-ranking military officers, planetary governors, even space marines. What unites them is that they have all undergone a specific dangerous transformation. To join the Illuminati, one must undergo possession by a demon and then successfully cast it out through sheer willpower, leaving the person's soul intact but fundamentally changed. This process is extraordinarily dangerous. Most who attempt it die or are permanently possessed. But those who succeed become illuminated. Their souls are strengthened and they gain the ability to perceive chaos directly, without being corrupted by the knowledge. This resistance to chaos corruption is critical because it allows the Illuminati to know the full truth about the Emperor, the Sensei, the Star Child, and the cosmic horror threatening humanity without going mad or falling to chaos themselves. The Illuminati believe that the Emperor must die and be reborn as the Star Child. They work toward this goal while simultaneously trying to ensure humanity can survive the transition period when the Emperor is dead and the Star Child hasn't fully manifested yet. Their activities include finding and protecting Sensei throughout the galaxy, secretly accumulating power and resources for the coming transition, infiltrating Imperial institutions to influence policy, researching alternatives to the Golden Throne, and preparing for the ritual that will allow the Star Child to be born. According to the old lore, the Illuminati's endgame is a ritual of staggering scope. When the time is right, when the Golden Throne finally fails, or when they judge the Star Child has accumulated enough power, they plan to gather thousands of Sensei and bring them to Terra. They would perform a mass sacrifice, killing all the Sensei simultaneously while the Emperor dies. The combined soul energy of thousands of the Emperor's children merged with the Emperor's own departing soul, and the accumulated power of the Star Child, would create a psychic event of unimaginable magnitude. The Emperor would be reborn as a complete god, a warp entity powerful enough to rival or even exceed the Chaos Gods. Of course, this plan has numerous issues. First, it requires gathering thousands of sensei who are scattered across the galaxy and mostly don't want to die. Second, it requires someone to actually kill the Emperor or allow him to die, which goes against every instinct and law of the Imperium. Third, the ritual would need to be performed on Terra itself, the most heavily guarded location in the galaxy. Fourth, there's no guarantee it would actually work as intended. The Illuminati themselves are likely divided about the details. Some might want to accelerate the process, others might want to wait until conditions are perfect. Some might have lost faith in the plan entirely, and they must constantly evade the Inquisition, which would execute them immediately if their goals were discovered. Like the Sensei, the Illuminati have largely disappeared from modern 40K lore. They're not explicitly retconned, but they're not mentioned in current codices or novels. This creates an interesting ambiguity. Are they still out there, working in secret? Have they been purged by the Inquisition? Did they ever really exist? Or were they just another myth from 40K's early, wilder days? The fact that Games Workshop hasn't definitively said the Illuminati don't exist leaves room for them to remain as a shadowy presence in the background of the setting. Now that we've covered the theory's origins and key players, let's examine the evidence that the Star Child might actually exist and be growing in power. The most compelling evidence for the Star Child are the living saints warriors of the Imperium who manifest divine powers, return from death, and perform miracles. The most famous is Saint Celestin, a warrior of the Adeptus Sororitas, who has died and been resurrected multiple times, each time returning with golden wings of pure light and the power to inspire armies. Living saints are clearly empowered by something related to the Emperor. They call upon his name, they fight for the Imperium, and their powers are anathema to chaos. But where does this power come from? The Emperor on the Golden Throne is barely holding on, stretched thin across countless responsibilities. He can send occasional visions or manifestations, but sustained empowerment of multiple individuals across the galaxy seems beyond his capacity. Unless there's another source of power aligned with the Emperor or something. Like the Star Child, the theory suggests that living saints are avatars or chosen champions of the Star Child. As the nascent god grows in power, it can reach out and elevate worthy souls, granting them a fraction of its growing might. This explains why living saints seem to be becoming more common in recent Imperial history. The Star Child is getting stronger. The Legion of the Damned is another mysterious phenomenon that might connect to the Star Child. These spectral space marines appear in the Imperium's darkest hours, fight alongside desperate defenders, and then vanish without explanation. They're clearly connected to the Warp and to the Emperor, but their exact nature is debated. One theory is that they're the souls of dead space marines who remain loyal even in death, given form by the Emperor's power. But again, where does that power come from? The Star Child could be the source, gathering the souls of the faithful and giving them purpose even after death. The modern Imperium is defined by faith in the God Emperor. Trillions of humans pray to him daily. The ecclesiarchy preaches his divinity. Billions die with his name on their lips. This wasn't the Emperor's original plan. He despised religion and wanted humanity to embrace reason. But here's the thing, in the Warp, belief has power. The Chaos Gods were literally created by concentrated emotion and belief. If trillions of humans believe the Emperor is a god and pray to him constantly, that belief must be going somewhere. It must be doing something. The Star Child theory provides an answer. All that faith, all those prayers, all those souls calling out to the Emperor, they're feeding the Star Child, helping it grow stronger in the Warp. The Imperial cult, despite its corruption and superstition, is inadvertently nurturing a nascent god. In the game itself, the Adeptus Sororitas have acts of faith, special abilities that represent miraculous interventions, These aren't just psychic powers. They're described as divine blessings. Sisters of battle can perform incredible feats when their faith is strong enough. This game mechanic might reflect a lore reality that faith in the Emperor can produce tangible, miraculous effects. This is difficult to explain if the Emperor is just a powerful psyker slowly dying on a throne. But if there's a warp entity growing in power and fed by faith, these miracles make more sense. In the current era, Reboot Guilliman has returned and met with the Emperor. He refuses to tell anyone what was said, but his reaction suggests he was deeply disturbed. He saw something unexpected, something that challenged his understanding of his father. What if Guilliman realized the Emperor on the Golden Throne is no longer entirely the man who created him? What if he glimpsed the division, the dying body performing its functions while something else grows elsewhere? Guilliman's reaction could reflect his horror at discovering the Starchild theory has some truth to it. Multiple sources describe the Emperor as screaming psychically, in constant agony from his wounds and the burden he carries. But some interpretations suggest this isn't just pain, it's a psychic signal, a beacon, or even a birth cry. The Emperor is in the process of transformation, caught between death and rebirth, and his psychic presence reflects this liminal state. Demons and Chaos Champions express genuine fear of the Emperor, even in his current state. They refer to him with special names, the Anathema, the Corpse God. But their fear seems disproportionate to a dying psyker, even an incredibly powerful one. Perhaps they fear him because they sense what he's becoming, not just what he was. The Chaos Gods might perceive the Starchild's growth and recognize the threat it represents. Of course, we should also consider evidence against the theory. The Emperor himself never mentioned the Starchild, at least not in any records we have. If this was his plan, why not tell his sons? Why not prepare the Imperium for it? The Chaos Gods seem unworried about the Emperor's eventual death. They often taunt the Imperium about the Golden Throne's failure. If the Starchild posed a genuine threat, wouldn't they work harder to prevent the Emperor's death or to corrupt the nascent god? And living saints, the Legion of the Damned, and other phenomena could have alternative explanations that don't require the Starchild at all. The Starchild theory raises profound questions about the nature of divinity, identity, and transformation in the 40K universe. If the Starchild is a fragment of the Emperor's soul that has been growing separately for 10,000 years, is it still the same being? It would have the Emperor's memories, his power, his essence, but it's also been shaped by 10 millennia of worship, prayer, and the beliefs of trillions of humans who never knew the Emperor as he truly was. The imperial cult worships a god of righteousness, sacrifice, and holy war. They don't worship the rational secular tyrant of the Great Crusade. If the Starchild has been formed by this worship, it might reflect the Imperium's beliefs rather than the Emperor's original nature. The reborn god might be more aligned with the Ecclesiarchy's vision than with the Emperor's own philosophy. This creates a fascinating irony. The Emperor despised religion, but religion might be creating the god he becomes. This is a classic philosophical problem, the ship of Theseus. If you replace every plank of a ship one by one, is it still the same ship? Similarly, if every aspect of the Emperor changes through death and rebirth, his body destroyed, his soul divided and reformed, his nature shaped by worship rather than intention, is he still the Emperor? The Starchild theory suggests the Emperor is undergoing the ultimate ship of Theseus transformation. The being that emerges might claim continuity with the Emperor, might have his memories and power, but could be fundamentally different in priorities, temperament, and goals. This is the ultimate question. If the Emperor dies and the Starchild emerges as a full god, what happens next? The reborn Emperor could take direct action in the Materium, manifesting avatars, smiting enemies, and actively guiding the Imperium. He might lead a new great crusade, not with armies of space marines, but with divine power and miracles. Alternatively, the Starchild might remain primarily a warp entity, similar to the Chaos Gods, but aligned with humanity. He would protect human souls, grant blessings to the faithful, and battle the dark gods in the Imperium rather than the physical galaxy. The reborn emperor might reject the Imperium entirely, seeing what his empire has become a horrific theocracy built on suffering and superstition. He might seek to destroy it and start over. This would be the ultimate grimdark twist. The emperor returns, but his return is catastrophic for the Imperium that worshipped him. The darkest possibility is that the ritual fails. The emperor dies, the Star Child isn't ready, and humanity is left without protection in a galaxy that wants them dead. The Astronomicon goes dark, the webway breach opens, and Terra becomes a new Eye of Terror. The Imperium fragments and dies. The reborn emperor could also engage in a cosmic war with the Chaos Gods, fighting them directly in the warp. This would make the entire setting into a divine conflict with mortals as pawns and champions of the respective gods. The Star Child theory also raises questions about free will and destiny. If the emperor planned this, then 10,000 years of suffering have been deliberate, a necessary sacrifice to birth a god. Countless trillions have died, lived miserable lives, or suffered horribly, all to power the Imperium that feeds faith to the Star Child. Was this necessary? Could there have been another way? Or is the Emperor guilty of the ultimate utilitarian calculation, accepting infinite suffering if it leads to humanity's ultimate salvation? And what about the Sensei? They didn't choose to be the Emperor's children or to serve as fuel for a god's birth. The Illuminati's plan requires killing thousands of them without their consent. Is this justified if it saves humanity? In 40K, belief shapes reality in the warp. The Chaos Gods were created by emotion and faith. The Orc WAAGH field works because orcs believe it works. This raises disturbing implications for the Emperor. If the Star Child has been shaped by 10,000 years of Imperial worship, what is it? Is it the Emperor's soul, or is it humanity's collective idea of what the Emperor should be? Is there even a difference? The Emperor might become a god, but a god created by faith rather than by choice. A god whose nature reflects humanity's desperate need for a savior rather than the Emperor's original vision of a secular, rational humanity. The Star Child isn't the only theory about the Emperor's ultimate fate. Recent Horus Heresy lore introduced the concept of the Dark King, a potential future where the Emperor fully embraces godhood through chaos. In this vision, the Emperor would have become a fifth chaos god, the god of order and tyranny, ruling the warp and materium through absolute control. Malkador and others work to prevent this future, but some fans wonder if it's still possible. Perhaps the Emperor's death wouldn't lead to the benevolent Star Child, but to the Dark King instead. A god, yes, but a terrible one that embodies the Imperium's worst aspects: tyranny, oppression, genocide, and endless war. Another theory suggests there's no division, no Star Child. The Emperor simply is becoming a god through worship while still on the Golden Throne. The Emperor's waning physical form is irrelevant. His psychic presence grows stronger as faith feeds him. He doesn't need to die and be reborn because the transformation is happening gradually. This theory sees living saints, the Legion of the Damned, and other miracles as evidence that the Emperor is already manifesting divine power, even while physically dying. His death might simply complete the process, with his spirit fully ascending while his body finally fails. A more tragic interpretation suggests the Emperor never planned any of this. The Star Child, if it exists, is an accident, a consequence of his wounding by Horus. The Imperial cult's faith is creating something new in the warp, something that carries the Emperor's essence but isn't him. The Emperor might be trapped, watching his unintended divinity grow, horrified at what humanity has become in his name, but unable to change it. His psychic scream isn't a birth cry, but genuine agony at what he's becoming. Given that the Emperor was established as a perpetual and immortal who can resurrect after death, some fans believe his death would simply lead to regeneration. He would be reborn in a new body, perhaps weakened initially, but still himself, still possessing his full consciousness and memories. This is simpler than the Star Child theory, but raises questions about why he hasn't allowed himself to die yet. Perhaps the webway breach needs to be sealed first, or perhaps his death would take so long to recover from that humanity would be destroyed in the interim. A complex theory suggests there isn't one Star Child but multiple fragments of the Emperor existing simultaneously. The being on the Golden Throne is one fragment, the Star Child is another, and there might be others. Perhaps the Emperor scattered his consciousness deliberately to ensure that no single catastrophe could end him. In this scenario, the Emperor's death would free one fragment, but others would continue existing. The Star Child might merge with them or might not. It depends on the specific details of how his soul divided. Some fans point to the Astronomicon as evidence of where the Emperor's power really goes. The psychic lighthouse requires enormous energy, and the Emperor maintains it personally. What if this constant expenditure of power is preventing him from accumulating the energy needed for transformation? If the Emperor died, the Astronomicon would fail, but his power would no longer be divided. He could focus entirely on rebirth, manifestation, or whatever transformation awaits. This suggests his continued existence is humanity's short-term salvation, but long-term doom. He's keeping them alive, but preventing his own apotheosis. So after all this discussion, what's the actual canonical status of the Star Child in modern Warhammer 40K? Games Workshop has been deliberately vague about this. The Star Child was explicitly mentioned in old Rogue Trader and 2nd edition materials. But in modern codices and rulebooks, it's not directly referenced. The Sensei aren't mentioned. The Illuminati are absent. This doesn't mean they've been retconned. Games Workshop often leaves old lore in a quantum state, where it neither exists nor doesn't exist until they need to make a decision. This gives them flexibility to bring back old concepts if they want, or ignore them if they don't. That said, there are subtle nods to the theory in modern sources. Living saints are more prominent than ever. The Emperor's divinity is emphasized rather than downplayed. The Imperial faith is treated as having real power, not just being superstition. The recent lore about the Emperor's audience with Guilliman suggests something is different about the Emperor. He's not just the man Guilliman remembers. This could be interpreted as supporting the idea of transformation or division. The Horus Heresy novel series has complicated things by exploring the Emperor's nature in more detail. We've learned about his creation of the Primarchs, his deal with the Chaos Gods, his plans for the Webway, and his vision for humanity. Interestingly, the novels have reinforced that the Emperor is capable of dividing his power. He did it to create the Primarchs, pulling aspects of himself into 20 separate beings. This precedent suggests he could potentially fragment his own soul, whether deliberately or accidentally. The novels also show the Emperor as more human and flawed than the Imperial cult's vision of him. This creates a gap between what the Emperor actually was and what faith says he is, a gap the Star Child could fill. Occasionally, Black Library authors or Games Workshop designers comment on the Star Child in interviews or social media. The general response is usually something like, "It's an interesting theory," or "That's old lore that we haven't decided what to do with yet." No one has definitively said, "The Star Child theory is wrong and never happened." But no one has confirmed it either. This ambiguity is probably deliberate. It lets different fans hold different interpretations, while keeping the mystery alive. It's worth noting that the tabletop game and the lore often diverge. In game terms, the Emperor isn't represented at all. He's stuck on the Golden Throne and doesn't have rules. Living saints like Celestin do have rules and are powerful units, but the game doesn't explain their power source. The lore has more room for mystery and speculation than the game, which needs clear rules and balance. The Star Child theory exists primarily in lore speculation rather than in game mechanics. Beyond the specific lore details, why does the Star Child theory resonate with fans? What narrative purpose does it serve? Warhammer 40K is famously grimdark. It's a setting where things are always getting worse, where there are no good guys, where the Imperium's cruelty is necessary for survival. The tagline, "In the grim darkness of the far future, there's only war," isn't hyperbole, it's the setting's core concept. But endless grimdark can become exhausting. If there's no hope at all, no possibility of improvement, then what's the point? Why do we care about the struggles of the characters if everything is doomed? The Starchild theory provides hope, not guaranteed victory, but the possibility of change. It suggests that the Emperor's sacrifice might mean something beyond just delaying the inevitable. It gives the Imperium's faith a purpose beyond delusion. This hope doesn't undermine the grimdark tone, because the Starchild's birth requires the Emperor's death, which would be catastrophic in the short term. And there's no guarantee the reborn Emperor would be benevolent or even recognize the Imperium as worth saving. Hope in 40K comes with a price, it always does. The theory also adds mythological depth to the setting. The Emperor's story becomes more than just powerful. Psyker gets wounded and slowly dies. It becomes a genuine myth of death and rebirth, sacrifice and transformation, divinity and humanity. These are ancient narrative patterns found in religions and mythologies across human culture. The dying and resurrecting God is one of humanity's oldest stories. By connecting the Emperor to this archetype, the Starchild theory makes his story resonate on a deeper level. It also creates dramatic tension. The Imperium is desperately trying to keep the Emperor alive, but what if that's the wrong strategy? What if humanity's salvation requires them to do the one thing they're most terrified of? This dramatic irony, where the audience knows something the characters don't, is a powerful storytelling tool. Fans can watch the Imperium struggle to maintain the status quo while understanding that the status quo might be the problem. The Starchild theory allows for character-driven stories about faith, doubt, and sacrifice. Imagine an inquisitor who discovers evidence of the Starchild and must decide what to do with that knowledge. Do they pursue it, knowing they'll be declared a heretic? Do they suppress it to maintain order? Do they pass the burden to someone else? These are fascinating moral dilemmas that the theory enables. The theory also respects the Emperor's complexity. He's not just a corpse or a god, he's both and neither. He's in transition, caught between states, simultaneously dying and being born. This liminal existence makes him more interesting than if he were simply dead or simply alive. The uncertainty about what he'll become adds mystery and keeps fans engaged. For Games Workshop as a company, keeping the Starchild theory ambiguous is strategically smart. They can reference it when they want to add depth and mystery, but they're not committed to it. If they decide to advance the 40K timeline significantly or create a dramatic shift in the setting, the Starchild could be their mechanism. If they prefer to keep things static, they can ignore it. The ambiguity gives them narrative flexibility. The theory also serves as a lens through which we can examine the Emperor's original goals versus what the Imperium has become. The Emperor wanted a secular, rational empire where humanity controlled its own destiny through science and reason. Instead, he's become the center of a religious cult that represents everything he opposed. The Starchild theory asks, if the Emperor is reborn, will he be the rational tyrant he was, or the God his followers believe in? Will faith transform him, or will he transform faith? This question gets at something fundamental about identity and belief. Are we defined by what we intend to be, or by what others believe us to be? In a universe where belief literally shapes reality, this isn't just philosophy, it's physics. The Emperor's transformation through faith might be inevitable, not because he planned it, but because billions of believers are making it happen whether he wants it or not. The Starchild also represents the idea that endings can be beginnings. The Emperor's death, which seems like the worst possible outcome for humanity, might actually be necessary for something better. This is a hopeful message wrapped in grimdark packaging. Yes, terrible things must happen, but they might lead to transformation rather than just oblivion. It's hope tempered by realism, which feels appropriate for 40K's tone. From a meta-narrative perspective, the Starchild theory acknowledges that 40K has evolved far beyond its original conception. The Emperor was originally just a powerful psyker who built an empire. Over decades of development, he's become something more, a mythological figure, a god in all but name, the center of faith for countless billions. The Star Child theory reconciles the original concept with the modern interpretation. By suggesting both are true, he was a psyker, and he's becoming a god, and the transformation isn't complete yet. The theory also gives the Imperium a potential path forward. One of the criticisms of 40K's setting is that it's static, nothing can change, because the game needs the setting to remain recognizable. But the Star Child provides a mechanism for dramatic change that doesn't destroy the setting's core identity. The Emperor could be reborn, the Imperium could be transformed, and it would still be recognizably 40K. The grimdark tone would remain because the transformation would be costly, uncertain, and potentially catastrophic in unexpected ways.